sports, the ultimate goal is to bring home the trophy, to be the world's best. Each sport has its symbol of excellence that says you are the champion. Heroes emerge because of their perseverance and dedication. The dream has been realized when the hardware is in hand. And for the major indoor lacrosse league, that hardware is the North American Cup. Today, the Philadelphia Wings take on the Rochester Nighthawks for the title. The defending champion Wings have all the pieces of the puzzle to repeat, starting with MVP and leading scorer Gary Gait. How about first-team All-Pro goalie Dallas Elliott? Gary Martin is the all-time leader in postseason appearances. And Tom Hollywood Marichek is a deadly finisher. Kevin Finneran, top assist man who can find rope as well. Plus, Tony Resch, the coach who's only lost 3 games in 2 years. But could the missing piece of this puzzle be Paul Gait? The former Wing has flown away from Philadelphia and has his own ideas about capturing the cup as the leader of the Rochester Nighthawks. State Spectrum in Philadelphia for a special ESPN2 presentation of the World Championship of Major Indoor League Lacrosse. It's the Rochester Nighthawks taking on the defending champion Philadelphia Wings for the cup. And 2 of the stars in this game will be identical twin brothers. Gary Gait for Philadelphia, the 95 mil MVP, and Paul Gait, once of Philadelphia, now of the Rochester team, the all-time leading scorer in this league. They will command a lot of attention on the offensive end, on the defensive end. Steve Dietrich, he will have to have a huge game for their team to be successful. Dallas Elliott is first-team All-Pro for Philadelphia. He must be as consistent as he has been all year. All set to drop the rock. I am Lee Felsmo, along with Christy Lee and Quinn Kesnick on the sidelines. We're all set for action. Rochester in the teal and white, Philadelphia in the silver and black, and you might get the feeling that this crowd that you can hear will be a big factor, and it will.
You got a door that's open.
Roy Condon in the white hat telling them to shut the door at the end so we can get this game rolling. Live from the Core State Spectrum, Tony Resch on the sideline of Philadelphia.
Right away, gang.
A veteran player from the Philadelphia team. Defense is his motto, his credo, and the foundation of this team's success. It'll be Silcott in the white jersey for Rochester against Gabrielson, number 8 for Philadelphia, the first face-off of the game. Possession's crucial. Rochester gets the first face-off. They'll want to calm things down, but they lose the ball. And that here comes Gabrielson. Looking for a run. Can't get it on goal. Back out, Gary Gait chases it down. Gubbin will take it in. Philadelphia wants to run and gun. Rochester will want to calm things down a little bit. Here's Gary Gait. Big MVP. Losing against Silcott. The push call gives it back to Rochester for their first offensive push of the night. Barry Collis, coach of the Rochester Nighthawks expansion team. And here comes Paul Gait. Number 19, Driscoll. Driscoll rockets that one off above it. The defensive player goes back to Pete Park, who picks it up well out front. Look at Pete Park, 6'5", 225 pounds. Shot clock down to 10, 9 seconds now. Park will have to get one off. He's tough to handle. Park moving inside. He takes a shot. He's gobbled up. LA makes his first save. Paul Gait gets the loose ball. Paul Gait in front. Can't find the target. Follow up. And he still can't find the target. Driscoll looking for no. They can't get it either. 2 shots miss the 4x4.5. Paul Gait. This guy led everybody last year's championship game in scoring with 8 goals. Shot clock again down to 5. It's a factor. And Elliott with another huge save. It rolls in over the shoulder. Rochester Woodhull. The pressure was intense from Rochester. They just kept pushing it on. Paul Gait and company had 3 or 4 shots, but get this one, the save is made. But watch the ball off his helmet in the net. It counts, folks. 1-0. Nighthawks draw first blood. And Paul Gait, 28th goal of the season, leading the Nighthawks. They're in. Can't beat Dietrich. That's exactly what they wanted, to get comfortable. The Nighthawks to get a little bit of a lead Philadelphia can carry you, absolutely carry you in the first quarter. They've done it to most teams throughout the year. Matt Ryder from Syracuse, he's in the crease.
All game, Chris Driscoll and Rex Lyons for the Nighthawks.
Here come the Wings. After Ryder misses it, watch out, drop stick by Burnham. That leaves somebody open. Billy Miller, checked by Thorpe. Sets that one high. Shot clock now down to 16. 1-0 in favor of the Rochester Nighthawks, the expansion team. Dietrich with a big save. Dietrich has told the story for the Nighthawks. He keeps them in every game. He has been sensational most of the year. Matt Ryder brings it back down again. Back to Benedict. Benedict very quick, very shifty. They'll change lines with the shot clock going down. They're wasting a lot of time getting fresh people on. And they're leaving themselves with about 10 seconds to get off an offense. Sudan, 4 seconds. Shot clock counting down. And they lose it. 30-second shot clock. You've got to put it on the goal. There'll be a timeout with 11:54 left. The Nighthawks lead by 1 for the championship of the Mill. They expected Rochester with a 1-0 lead, but the crowd is really making it difficult for that momentum to carry on. Hi, I'm Lee Felsbo. We talked about the keys to the offense being the two identical twins, the Gates. But the movers and shakers behind the Gate brothers for Philadelphia, it's Marechek and Finneran. They combined for 5 goals, 8 assists against the Nighthawks in an earlier matchup this year. For Rochester, Chris Driscoll and Timmy Sudan had like numbers, 5 goals, 7 assists the last time they met each other. It's critical for Rochester to get production out of these guys other than Paul Gate. And Christy Lee has the Rochester story.
Joining me, Chris Driscoll, one of our movers and shakers. And Chris, you are key to this offense, the second leading scorer. You were shut out in the playoff game against Boston. What are you going to do to step up your game?
I think I shoot the ball more out there and look for the open shots and take some better shots than I did last game against Boston.
You guys are already on to a quick 1-0 lead. Is that important for this team?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a big key to us. We can't let Philadelphia jump up on us because we'll be in a lot of trouble if they do.
Look for Chris Driscoll. Big on assists. He had 4 against the Boston Blazers.
Right now, it's Philadelphia with another shot. That one wide. Ground balls are always key in a game of lacrosse. No different here. Shot clock down to 7. They take it outside. They thought it was a goal, but it was actually Dietrich's stick that hit the net. The rope was by the stick, not the ball. They still maintain possession, though. A fresh shot clock down now. We'll have 22 seconds. Martin. This net jumped again because of Dietrich's stick. They get a fresh shot clock, a lot of pressure. This was the same formula that got a goal for Rochester. Continual shots, 3 and 4. Brady with the loose ball. Chris Flynn, the heart and soul of this team. Shot clock was only down to 15. He took a pretty mediocre shot from Chris Flynn. He could really show you some dramatic diving shot. That was right into the chest protection of Dietrich. And here come Paul Gate of the Nighthawks. They've got the 1-0 lead. They had a good offensive set. Pick and roll by Rex Lyons and Paul Gate. Pete Park can't pick it up because Paul Gate just blew it away. Go, Jobs! Come on! Wings now bring the ball down for their offensive set. Marechek cannot pick it up. He gets the rebound. Reverse angle. Watch how he picks up his own rebound off a great defense. He comes in. Silcott missed the second chance at him, and Marechek follows it up. Silcott dislikes the ball. Marechek stayed with it. He gets another shot, and he makes it stick. 1-1. Tie game. Just under 10 minutes left in the first quarter. Philadelphia gets the ball back. Rochester's out for the first 1-0 lead, scoring about 2 minutes in the game. Another shot for Marechek. Looking for a rope. Can't get a good save by Dietrich. How do you guard against a behind-the-back shot? Well, Dietrich did a great job. Marechek was the leading scorer when the Nighthawks played Philadelphia here during the regular season. They had a huge game. 4 goals, 3 assists. Nighthawks reloading. Matt Ryder, he'll be inside for a shot. Goes wide.
Everybody.
Paul Gate. I'm sorry, Gary Gate off to the races. He's impossible to stop. Looking for low, can't find the target. 3 players couldn't stop Gary Gate. This is such a tough line, the first unit for Philadelphia. Well, they come off now and shift to the next line. Bates, Miller, Denikin, and Finneran, and McAvoy. Marichek's been a big part of the offense with Winscom on the sideline.
Tom Marichek, you guys seemed a little tight the first 5 minutes. Big goal, though. Yeah, it was tight. We had to get something going there, and thank God I bobbled the ball there, as you saw it, but I got my rebound and found the net. Philadelphia looking to repeat down here.
This one by Paul Gate puts pressure on Elliott, but it goes wide. And you're absolutely right, Quinn. Marichek has been putting pressure on him, and he's had his opportunities. Roy Condon inbounds for Philly now. It's tied at 1. 8 minutes left in the first. Top Finneran and a big arm save by Dietrich. Philadelphia wants to run. Rochester ran with him the first time they met. Watch Sudan, backdoor, Gate. Well, what they're worried about is a Paul Gate show. That's what Philadelphia is afraid of. Here's Sudan giving it off to Paul Gate. He sticks it backside. Right now the score, Paul Gate 2, Philadelphia 1. Paul Gate played for Philadelphia last year when they won the North American Cup and the World Championship of Indoor Lacrosse. Paul Gate was the leading scorer in the championship game. He is now on the opposition. Backdoor, Chris Flynn goes down low for Johnny Dahlstrom. Dahlstrom back to Flynn. Flynn loves the right-handed shot. Ready player. Boker, defensive specialist, back to Flynn. They call him Chugger, and he's been making the big save so far. Shots on goal, Philadelphia absolutely dominating that statistic 10-4.
Right time, no restart, no restart.
There's a timeout on the field. 7 minutes left. The Nighthawks with a 2-1 lead. They are absolutely shocking the crowd at the time.
Get lots of opportunities. So far, we got a lot of shots, and that's the key to my game is to get a lot of shots, and I'll score something nice for it.
Paul Gate doing a great job of scoring so far early in this championship.
Hey, Christy Lee, the numbers have shown that Philadelphia had 10 shots on goal against 4. That number was just moments ago. So Rochester not putting that many on goal, but when they do, they can stick it pretty good to the one they lead, and they have possession. They have been known as one of the better finishing teams in the Major Indoor Lacrosse League. A lot of Canadian influence in their play. Randy Mearns, give and go. Dewey Jacobs can't get it. Shot clock down to 8. Pete Park shovels it into Jacobs. Ryder with 2 seconds left, they'll lose it. He can't get it to fall. Shot clock violation. Barry Palace, that is Gary Gates. Barry Palace for the expansion Nighthawks, hopeful of winning a world championship in the first year of play for Rochester. Billy Miller initiating from the backside, comes around, and Dietrich makes that big save. Look how Dietrich, how big Dietrich is. He just throws it up. That's his style, not as flamboyant as the other end. You'll see Dallas Elliott go through all sorts of gyrations.
Nice sir, nice sir.
Paul Gate, number 19, back on the field. This is the number 1 offensive unit. Gate tough to cover. Rocket and rope. It's the Paul Gate show so far. 3 goals, a hat trick for the all-time leading scorer in the middle. Look at the pick and roll. Lyons sets up a pick for him. He gets in front. He has the whole 18 square feet to shoot at. Comes off of Lyons, locks himself up, and just gets it inside the pipe. Beautiful job. The best shooter in the league, Paul Gate. 3-1 they lead. Sudan wraps it around his shoulder. Can't get it on the mark.
39. All game with a hat trick for Rochester.
Burns to Lemon.
Wayne Jacobs and Randy Mayer.
Paul Gates, 3 goals in 10 minutes. It's Paul Gate now 3. Philadelphia 1. Paul Gate again. Checked it behind by Volker. Good job. He gets his own rebound though in the first shot clock. He's tough to cover by 2 players even. Sudan with a screen. Fresh shot clock for Rochester Pete Park, 6'5", 225. Backdoor 11. What a save! Winchell-Leitler. Fresh shot clock again, and here comes O'Grady. He's got Martin up front. It's Martin with Paul Gate playing defense, and Dietrich makes the save. Reset. Push call on Paul Gate, who really exploded to get back down there and play Martin. Dietrich is playing tough, but Elliott has been unbelievable in his end as well. This reverse angle shows you that last save on tight. It was Lemon right in his face. Elliott, as he always does, keeps his team in the game. 11 saves for Dietrich. Elliott was 6. It just shows you that Philadelphia not putting the ball on the goal as much. Good call on Paul Gate. He had 2 guys hammering him. No call. Burnham picks it up. Shot clock down to 10. Can Burnham see it? Look at him down now. 7. He's going to have to shoot. Check him over top. Ball loose. Gary Gate with a great check. Gary Gate. Eyes all over the field, looking to pass. Can shoot. Ball goes wide. It was a check by Burnham. So Gate takes it away from Burnham. Burnham comes back and strips Gate of a good shot to give it back to the Nighthawks with 3 minutes left in the first quarter. A 3-1 lead for Rochester in white. Dewey Jacobs. Burns. Tough defense by Gabrielson. They tried to get it down low. Jacobson couldn't get it. Shot clock was down to 0 anyway. They lost possession there. They've done that several times. Quinn Kesnick on the sideline.
Gary Martin, defensive specialist. What's going through your mind when you're trying to cover Paul Gate?
You just got to play him, overplay him to the left-hand side. You can't let him go through the middle. He's been beating us, so we just got to play harder, dig our feet to the ground a little bit harder, and try to get him to go to his right hand.
Gary Martin playing in the final game of his career after an 8-year outstanding middle career.
He is the bread and butter of the defensive end of the field, and that's what Philadelphia keeps
My time!
promoting. The
Tony,
defense.
my time! My time!
Tony Rush a little bit worried. His team down by 2 with 2.5 minutes left. The Nighthawks are leading the defending champions. Things can get tough. This action against the boards sends both of these players into the box for 2 minutes. It's Emick and Denikin. There's Emick in the bench. It's 4-on-4 for these 2 teams. Each a man short. Opens up the field. This is when a guy like Gary or Paul Gate can really kill you. Right now, though, Rochester has the ball and a lot of shot clock time. Chris Driscoll looks for cutting players. Goes to the back door. Can't find Rex Lyons. Watch out for Billy Miller. Can't pick up the ball. He finally does. Miller off and running. Nobody out in front of him, so he peels back. Gary Gate is on. This kind of 4-on-4 really helps a guy like Gary Gate and Paul Gate because they can't back up as much. Gives them a little more green space to see if they can get the ball into Gary Gate's hand. Finneran's got it now behind, initiating from the back, making Dietrich go from back side to front side. Shot clock down to 8.
Please, illegal kick!
So Finneran handled the ball. It seems like in that situation, boy, they really create havoc if Gary had the ball. They couldn't get it to him. Here comes the offense for the Nighthawks. Paul Gate comes off the field. Paul Gate has 3 goals so far. The Wings, Crew Marichek have 1. They lead 3-1 in the first quarter of the championship. Inside to Driscoll. He can't pick it up because of Volker's play. Breaking Thorpe, a big part of the defense, and he's on the bench. Wait a minute. Austin in for a fast break. He's checked by Thorpe. Well, we just had Thorpe, but he came off the bench and made the big check on Nostrin.
Reset!
Christy Lee was going to be talking to Thorpe, but he didn't keep his eye off the field because on that fast break by Nostrand, Thorpe bolted from Christy Lee, went on and made the big check on Johnny Nostrand. There's a hit by Thorpe on the far side. After he had made the check, he had hit on the far side. Centering. Ball back out front. Nostrand chases it down. We're live on ESPN. This is our exclusive and special ESPN2 coverage of Major Indoor Lacrosse. I'm Lee Felsmo along with Christy Lee and Quinn Kesnick on the sideline. First quarter action winding down. The upstart Nighthawks have the lead. Fakes. Can't get it in. Shot clock down to 0, and they lose possession. Now the Nighthawks should be able to hold it for most of the remaining seconds of the quarter. Their shot clock is at 24, quarter clock at 36. Benedict tries to get around Flynn, can't do it. Now he's open! Mike Benedict stings the net. Finds rope for the 4th time. He's looking at Flynn get turned around. Flynn was turned around, and it gave Benedict a chance to come well in front of the goal. He's doing his dance. Benedict, a very quick player, working that left side. 7th goal of the year for him. 4-1. 3-goal lead for the Rochester Nighthawks. The face-off, Silcott looking for a trailer. It's Sudan. He checks the clock. You see the time winding down. Sudan trying to dive in, gets ridden off by Volker. Not much time. Can he pick it up? Gableson looking to get possession. Up front is Miller. Can't do it. Time runs down. The Nighthawks shot the Core State Spectrum. They lead by 3 in the first quarter. Rochester shocking Philadelphia. They lead 4-1. Special ESPN2 coverage of Major Indoor Lacrosse on ESPN. We hope you're enjoying it. If you do, folks, get involved. Call your cable operators. Say, we want more Mill. Christy Lee's got Mike Benedict. He scored the last goal.
That's right, Lee. That was a sweet goal for you, Mike.
Oh yeah, I think I looked at the clock and I only seen like 28 seconds up there, and I only had one guy on my side, so I said I'm going to take him one-on-one. I'll see what happens. And then Dallas gave me the whole side. I took it and seen the red light come on, so I did a little dance and got the crowd going and get our team back on over there.
Are you surprised at this quick start?
Oh yeah, very surprised. Like last time we did these guys, I think it was like we came out a little bit flat, then we got into it. But now we got the upper hand here. They got to come after us, and we're not going to let them.
Yeah, the last time you guys played, Paul was injured, so imagine what you guys can do today.
Oh yeah, imagine like he's having a great game now, and I think we got him for the whole game, so hopefully it'll turn out for the best for us.
And hopefully those Rochester Nighthawks are going to keep Paul Gates safe and healthy.
Rex Lyons working the near side. This is that one. And the Nighthawks get back in quick. Philadelphia wants to really stretch the transition, but the Nighthawks have really been packing in the defense and not letting him get a transition game going. Chris Flynn looks for an opening. A little bit of a screen, but doesn't find the mark. Oh, Brady can't pick it up. It was written on the blackboard. Play defense. Back up the fast breaks. Paul Gate can't find rope. You heard it. You heard something ricochet off the iron. Chris Flynn picks up the loose ball. Lofts it to Nostrand. No, he can't find it. Eric Check backs it up. He's got 20 seconds left. Eric Check on the field. Gary Gate defense by Reggie Thorpe. 2 All-Americans at Syracuse. Here's Gate against Thorpe. Backs up his own shot. Eric Check back to Gate. Rope. Check and Gary Gate just getting that rebound again. It was a good save initially, but Eric Check puts that loose ball down to Gary, dips inside, and that wasn't a matchup defensively, but Gary Gate's tremendous skill gets that ball in 4-2. They're back to within 2. Eric Check has scored once, Gate has scored once. Paul Gate 3 times for Rochester along with Benedict. That's where we stay early in the second quarter. to Ryder. Burns can't pick it up. Ball loose. Burns out in front. Back door. Jacobs. Jacobs has been open several times. They can't get the ball. Big check from behind. Air check up front. Air check on the pass. He can't pull it down. He's got a little bit of room. He's got a great stick up front. Gabrielson down low. Picked off. Burns gets that one after Park knocked it down. First quarter stat summary. Shots very even. Loose balls. Philadelphia killing him in that category. That's the number that jumps out. But they've got nothing to show for it on the scoreboard. And the game has been going where they've been trying to get the transition, but the Nighthawks have been packing in the defense, not letting him run. Elliott with an easy save. Philadelphia sideline might be worried. Quick testing. Is the coaching staff together?
Coach Corrigan, you guys are a team that averages 14 a game. Race your third. Beautiful goal. That's your third of the game. Offensive production a little slow early though. Yeah, we're playing quick. We're getting caught out too high offensively. What we're trying to do right now is pound the ball lower down into the corners and then work our cutting game. Back upstairs to Leaf.
Well, they got it going here. Watch Denikin come in. Great feed to him. Back door. He gets through. Paul Denikin has been in a scoring slump. Watch Gato, one-handed feed. One-handed with a tough defense by Sedan. Puts it all the way across to Denikin with the one-handed feed, and Denikin buries it. 2 goals in 2 minutes for Philadelphia. And that's where Denikin really can kill you. He's a great finisher from the right side. Denikin has had a little bit of a slump. Changed his stick back to an old stick. Seems to pay dividends in his first try. Dietrich comes out, gives the ball back to Emick. They've got 4 seconds left in the shot clock. You better hurry up and throw it in. No, ball's pay down. And they lose it. Those 2 goals were in a minute and 30 seconds. Philadelphia back to a 1-goal deficit. They're down 4-3 to the Nighthawks. While Denikin just scored, he is looking for help with Richie Thorpe on him. Hesitation. Shot bounces off of Burns. Nighthawks again clogging up the middle. Dietrich has told him, look, let him shoot from the outside. I don't want these guys in my face. He's not comfortable with Dietrich, the goalie. The shot's coming in close, like that last goal by Denikin. He wants him to shoot from the outside. Just go. Looking for a shot. He can't beat it. Elliott. Follow up. No look. That one counts. Goalies say yes. 5-3 Nighthawks. Wait a minute. Now they're taking it out. There's the rebound. That ball's in, but he was in the crease. Lemon was in the crease, but now they've taken away. Right there, they gave it to him. Wait a minute. They are giving him the go. It's 5-3, folks. When we come back, we'll continue with second quarter action. 5-3 Nighthawks. Gets a 2-goal lead on this goal by Brian Lemon. Watch, Driscoll makes a shot, a big save. Lemon comes in, follows up. That's a good goal, yes. He finds Rowe. 2 referees were involved. One says no, one says yes. Head referee Roy Condon settled the dispute. It counts, folks. He had a great position on it. It's a 5-3 game in favor of Rochester. We're live on ESPN with our ESPN2 coverage of Major Indoor Lacrosse. We had a 12-game schedule this year. A regular time slot every Sunday night. I think you'll agree, it's great action. Tremendously exciting to watch. Moore State Spectrum, one of the toughest places to play in if you're an opposing team, because they pack this place. Great enthusiastic fans. Chris Flynn, play down by 2. Gets a screen, but Emick deflects it just enough. Shot clock still counting, down to 10. 9 minutes left in the second quarter. O'Grady comes in. Shot clock down now to 6. Austin can't pick it up. They'll lose possession this time. Austin shoots from way out. Ball goes back to the Nighthawks. First time these two teams met was an 18-17 track meet. Home team has won only 2 of 8 championship games. Philly in '89, Buffalo in '93. As a matter of fact, the last last time Philly lost was right here on a Saturday afternoon game for the championship. It was in '92 against Buffalo, and they were an expansion team. So this man, Barry Palace, hopes that he can repeat that kind of history. Big can't find it. Just absolutely missed the whole goal.
Right behind him.
Ball goes out of bounds. Gate was in on the fast break. Knows he has to stick. Kevin Fitteran's the big assist man for Philly. Q's got him.
Kevin, slow start, uncharacteristic for you guys. Yeah, it's something we haven't faced all season. We got to tuck it up here. See what kind of team we're made of. I think we'll come around. 24 assists for Kevin Fitteran. Look for him in the second, third quarter.
Quinn, you're absolutely right, because this team killed people in the first quarter.
That way!
Old call. You heard Roy Condon on. Philadelphia. Ray Rush can't believe it. Driscoll looking for help. This team, watch out up front. Rogers goes way up front. Govett trails. Gate has it. Back to Marichek. Ball knocked down by Lemon. Paul Gate bounces it to Driscoll. Great feed, but Driscoll couldn't pick it up. Now he does. Trailing players, Lemon! No goal. They gave Lemon one. They didn't give him this one. So Lemon. No goal. No goal. It remains 6-3. 3-goal lead for the Nighthawks. 8 minutes to go in the second quarter. Brian Lemon's been walking a fine line all night. Watch his foot. It goes down outside the line, then he shoots. That should be a goal. They took it off the boards, didn't count it. They still have a 5-3 lead. Look at it again. There's the left foot. It's okay. He's in the air. That should count. Now, he also scored a goal moments ago that looked like it might not be good. So he gets one. He doesn't get one, but great hustle for Brian Lemon working the crease area. And Christie's got Brian right now on the sideline.
Brian, you just saw that replay. You're pretty upset when you came off the field.
Yeah, I just took a look at it, and I was close, but I wasn't in the crease on that last one.
Well, you have one goal and scored, and you guys are, even though you're a young rookie team, you do have a lot of playoff experience.
Yeah, we do. We have a lot of guys that played on a few championships, and we're playing really well so far here. We just got to keep on going.
And keep your feet out of the crease. Brian Lemon for the Rochester Nighthawks.
Brian Lemon played for Baltimore. He played for Detroit, and now with the Nighthawks. Rochester 2-goal lead and the ball. 7:30 left in the half. Timmy Sudan, all-pro last year for Boston. Looking from behind. That Dallas Elliott turned around. Two players in the same place, and Park and Jacobs can't get it. Shot clock down to 2. They're going to lose it. Oh, they put one right in Elliott's face. And it rolled in. That's a goal. The buzzer went, but it went in.
It went in. Hey, he shot it. The shot has to be off, not the goal. It was on zero.
This was a goal because Roy Condon says, as long as the shot hits him before the buzzer, let's take a look at it in real time. Park knows it's winding down. And the ball rolls in, and they count it. 6-3. Park looked up, saw the shot clock at 1. Rifles one at Elliott, who might have been relaxing a little bit. Hit his face mask and rolled behind him. 6-3, and 2 of those 6 goals bounced off of Dallas Elliott. One over the top of his helmet, that one off his shoulder and face mask. Park looking for a rope, can't find it. Ball stuck in the padding of Dallas Elliott. 3-goal lead for Philadelphia normally owns the first quarter. They usually kill you in the first. Not tonight. The Nighthawks really took charge of that, not letting them get transition. Chris Flynn with a little bit of a screen. Looking back and forth, shot clock down to 6-5. Randy Burns, ball down, still loose. Now, Flint ragged for possession. Reggie Burke, the enforcer. They've got a fast break if they hurry. If they hurry, no. 3 Philadelphia players back to the right of your screen. Fresh legs come on. Down to Driscoll, inside! Elliott. Lions can't get it. even 2 to go.
That way!
Nostrand deflected that one, but watch Flynn get leveled by Reggie Thorpe, the enforcer. Number 11, right there. That's your defensive specialist, All-American from Syracuse, Reggie Thorpe. And Flynn can't believe it. We'll be back with the final 5 minutes and 30 seconds of the first half. The Nighthawks taking charge with a 3-goal lead. Tony Resch and the Philadelphia Wings are a little bit concerned because Rochester has turned this into a 5-on-5 game. They've taken them out of the first quarter. They took them out of a transition game, and Rochester has a 3-goal lead. But Philadelphia is as good in condition, probably the best conditioned team in the league. In the fourth quarter, they should be in great shape to keep running. Will Rochester? We don't know. Covett goes to the box for 2 minutes. Meanwhile, the defensive specialist, Reggie Thorpe, is on the sideline with Christie.
Reggie, you're having a great game. What are you guys doing specifically to stop Gary Gait? I know Coach Paulus has told you to shadow him.
You can shadow him, but you can only contain him. He's hot. He's got to get us 3 or 4 goals. We just got to hope to contain him.
An All-American from Syracuse, Reggie Thorpe playing some great D.
I tell you what, you saw the look on Chris Flynn's face when he got nailed. But here's the penalty. Paul Gait is mugged again. Now, Volker doesn't get the penalty for that. The penalty came against Covett farther to the right of that play. And Philadelphia definitely a little bit rocky right here. Paul Gait getting hooked up.
5-on-3 here. Let's start. We're playing with our on Gator. All right, we're just going to have to stand in tight. All right, where's Dallas? Figure out which of those top shooters he wants. Right? I don't want the diagonal for the dunk. Okay, so we're going to have to sit basically and try. We got to spin if we have to. That's all. We're all working. All right? We're fine. Let's just stay tight. Ask Dolly where he wants a shot if he's got a choice. Go ahead. Let's go.
So Tony Resch and company a little bit upset. Watch Gait get nailed down, and then Volker just smashes him in the face. Unbelievable. And that's what he's being tended to in the far side. Volker just hits him right in the face. And he's getting a little bit of attention from the sideline with maybe some tape work to keep that tight. But he is on the field. Paul Gait working of the shooter's left. He's to your right of the screen here. Up top, if you're the goalie, up top to the left. I don't think this is the best,
top center,
at least in my opinion, formation for them. Paul Gait is so dangerous when he's up top. Right now, though, Driscoll got low.
Rochester goal. Both players come out of the box.
They make it look so easy. And the crowd here from Rochester, there's so much attention given to Paul Gait. He just went to the far side, the side away from him. Kills my theory, because look at this. Driscoll's wide open. He walks in and just rockets that one. Easily finds rope. 3 unanswered goals. 7-3 they lead. Driscoll comes up big. Philadelphia with the base. And that one, Dietrich bounces back. Reggie Thorpe's got Sudan up top. He doesn't see him. Finally digs it out of his own end. The Nighthawks, I'm not sure, believe they could win this when they came into town, but they certainly do now. A 4-goal lead with 4 minutes, 30 seconds left in the half. Lee Felsberg, Quinn Keswick, and Christie Lee. Elliott with a big save. A first shot clock, Sudan's trouble. He can't get it back. This has certainly turned into a 5-on-5 game, and that suits Rochester's style. Also is an even 5-on-5 because Covett is out of the box. Backdoor, Rogers can't beat Dietrich. Jimmy Rogers from Villanova had a chance on a feed from Gary. Gary Gait gave it to Rogers, and they couldn't beat Dietrich. 3 unanswered goals in less than 5 minutes. That 4-goal lead now. Philly got back to within 1. It was 4-3 at one point. Paul Gait gets past Volker easily. No, it's Gabrielson. Paul Gait down low. Lions. Rex Lyons had 3 goals last week in the playoffs. playoff game and primarily as a finisher, just like you'll see him here. All the attention's on Paul. He sees down low. Lyons wide open. Lyons just finishes against Elliott. Watch Paul spot Lyons low. He's double teamed. He finds Lyons low all by himself, and Lyons goes one-on-one with a moving Dallas Elliott. More pressure on Dallas. A 4, now a 5-goal lead for the Rochester Nighthawks. Fennery, the great assist guy. McAvoy. Fennery's going to shoot. No, tries to give it the face. Fennery had the great shot. Back door. Stops 4 straight goals to the Nighthawks, makes it 8-4. Watch him dig it down the corner all the way over to Billy Miller, who sticks it past Dietrich. A 4-goal lead for Rochester.
Rochester stuff.
8-4, Rochester leading by 4 goals. That is the shock story to the home crowd. 2:57 left, just in the 3 minutes. Blaine trying to get his team back in it. Can't beat Dietrich. McAvoy looks up top. Oh, picked off beautifully by Howlczyk, a brand new player. Gabrielson, one of the team leaders with Quinn Kesselring.
Scott, coming into this game, you guys wanted to run, use your quickness and your speed. We haven't seen that yet. Yeah, we haven't got it going yet. I mean, they're playing a zone defense on us, and we're trying to just spread it out. We're trying to get pushing up the floor, get our transition going, and we haven't been successful in the first half. Hopefully the second half. Right now in the second half, we'll turn it on. As Rochester Tires look for the Philadelphia transition game to kick in.
And Quint, that will be a story. I've talked a little bit about the conditioning of the Philadelphia team. Nobody's in better condition. This is a very fit team. That will pay dividends for them in the fourth quarter. But again, this is the championship in Rochester, the 4-goal lead. Emotionally, it will be very tough to beat throughout this game because they know it's all on the line. Billy works from behind the goal out to Rogers. And you can see how the Nighthawks are just packing it back door. Great play by Martin to come up the backside, but it was Dietrich who made a sensational save. A great offensive scheme, starting from behind, making Dietrich look out front again, and then going to the back door, but Dietrich somehow makes a save. Hallgate looking for it, hits the back. 1:37 left as Hallgate comes off for a breather. Billy with a chance to make a 3-goal game. They need one big time. Johnny Nelson, a great outside shooter. Jimmy Rogers, a young kid from Villanova. Picked off that give and go to Martin. Nelson couldn't handle it. Neither can Martin. Martin has a chip on it. Should get a fresh shot clock, and he does. 1:12 left in the half. Gary Gay with only 1 goal so far for Philadelphia. Rex wants a timeout.
Good job, fellas. Good job. Good job, ball work there. Keep going. Keep going. Let's go, B. Got an O-line down there. Let's have 5 ready. They can put somebody in front. Keep it foul. We got timeout, right? Okay, we got. You know what's going to happen? We'll take a timeout. We come on this set. We'll run a set. We can rest and put our rib line out here. Okay. We got a timeout. We got 2 left. Right. But as soon as we get up towards center, I'll take a time. Okay. Okay. Yeah. We got 2 left. Yeah. We get 2 for half. Right. We got 2. We got 2.
So each coach wanting to stick a goal before the last minute and 8 seconds gone. Andy Restrio in postseason as a coach in his second year. You heard Barry Powell say if they get possession, he wants a timeout as well. Right now, though, this will be a play set up by Corrigan while Rush was talking about team defense. 15 on the shot clock. Gary Gate up top. Sudan wraps it around. Backdoor, they can't get it to Maricek. Gary Gate picks it up. 5 seconds on the shot clock. Gate can't beat Dietrich. Now watch if they call that timeout. Palace wanted a timeout as soon as they got up to midfield. See if they can get it up. Good ride by Philly. They've got 35 left, and this is where he wanted the timeout right here.
Timeout, White. Okay, let's stay here. Good job. Last thing we wanted. Hey? Last thing we wanted.
After the game today at the Bud Light post-game party at Players Lounge at the airport.
Coming back. Okay, let's put the ball up high. Put up high with Paul, all right? Start with the ball with Paul. They know they're going to double. So Rex, what we want you to do, we want something from the right is double screen coming over and low. You got to be low. Be low, so there's a double count just coming out. Okay? What we got? We got D on this score.
So Gary Gate will initiate up top. They want the double to come up top, so they want to keep the ball high, make the double come high, so that the open man is going to be down on the wing of Elliott. They want to slam dunk. They want to get the defense sliding hard and fast up top. Paul Gate will initiate the offense. Shot clock you see right there, or the game clock in the half. Everybody staying tight to the man. Paul looking for a sliding player, and it's Volker who just was playing great position. Brian Volker slid halfway and picked off the pass. Lemon will get 2 minutes for that.
7 hold. I got it. On the 7, hold, 2 minutes. 5 on 4.
Brian Lemon can't believe it. He didn't want to make that penalty. Philadelphia really wasn't going to be in a chance to hurt you. They only had 6 seconds left. And Lemon commits a penalty that will carry over into the second half.
Hey! Do we have a timeout? No.
Goalie out. It'll be a 6-on-4. Doesn't help you. Gary Gate, Rockets won with 3 seconds left. Sedano clears. Whoa! They plug it up to no goalie, and it goes wide. That'll end the first half. The second half will start with the Nighthawks, Brian Lemon in the penalty box, but it has been a great first half for the Nighthawks. They have a 4-goal lead, and Paul Gate has had a sensational offensive first half.
That's right, Lee. Paul Gate joining me now. You have a hat trick already in this first half. Let's talk a little bit about the brother rivalry coming into this game.
Not much of a brother rivalry. I'm out there to win a championship, not competed directly against my brother, so I don't think it's much of a rivalry. I think that's all talk and part of the hype, and we're just out there to play lacrosse. He's out there to win, I'm out there to win.
What about getting that stick in your face by Brian Volker?
It's part of the game. It happens every now and then. My helmet broke on that one. Normally my helmet doesn't come off, so I'm usually pretty well protected, but every now and then something like that will happen.
Why do you think there's such a lack of transition from Philly in this first half?
I think because we get a lot of loose balls defensively and also offensively. If we get offensive rebounds, they can't break out and get their transition going.
All right, thank you very much. A very loose Rochester team today, right?
Not too bad. We had nothing to lose coming in. I mean, obviously they're probably ranked ahead of us and supposed to win, and they have everything to lose, and we've got everything to gain.
Take care of that bloody nose, Paul. We'll see you in the second half. Well, it's 8-4. The Rochester Nighthawks do lead here at halftime at the Core State Spectrum over the world champion Philadelphia Wings. Let's give you a little bit of a look at what goes on in lacrosse when they chest that ball in rules and tools.
Time for the rules and tools of the mill. Brought to you by Old Spice High Endurance Deodorant and alcohol-free sensitive aftershave. The rules in the league don't allow you to artificially help control the ball. Now you'll see it 2 different ways primarily, and both are called withholding the ball from play. One is thumbing the ball. You can't put your thumb on the ball and hold it in the pocket. The other is pulling it to your chest. When you get into heavy traffic, a lot of players will pull it in close, use their body to control possession. Both are withholding the ball from play. Both are illegal.
Welcome back to a special presentation of ESPN2 on ESPN of the Major Indoor Lacrosse League World Championship game. We're at halftime at the Core State Spectrum in Philadelphia, where the Rochester Nighthawks, an expansion team in this league, have come in and shot the Wings 8-4. Join us on ESPN for more of the America's Cup. Coverage continues on Monday. That's at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, 1 o'clock Pacific Time. Well, we're back here at the Core State Spectrum. Christy Lee along with Quint Pesanek. And I'll tell you what, Quint, this first half is a surprise for a lot of people. people. They thought the Wings traditionally come out in the first quarter, really take it to the rope, hit rope early, but it hasn't been that way. The Nighthawks have been loose. They've been running. They've got a great running game going, and they feel good, and it shows in the score.
And I think conversely, Philadelphia, they came out tight. Let's take a look at some highlights. This is Brian Lemon early on. This is a no goal. They ruled that he stepped in the crease right there. You can see Roy Condon, the official, had a perfect angle.
There's a lot of controversy so far in this game. Peter Park here with another controversial goal. Time running out on the clock. He shoots it. Dallas thought it wouldn't be a goal because the shot clock had expired, but it did fall into the ball, and they called it a good goal.
That's right. The shot clock expires when the ball leaves the shooter's stick, not when the ball goes across the goal line. So those were both good calls.
That's right. We're going to see a lot more offense, I think, in the second half from the Wings. I really think they have it in them. They did it last year in the championship game. For those of you who were with us, you'll recall, against Buffalo, they came out smoking in the third.
Well, I think they left their best game up in Buffalo in the semifinals. I think they looked at that game as if it were the championship. They came out a little flat today. This is a team that they've beaten already this year, but look for them in the third and fourth quarter to really try to wear Rochester down. They've got to get higher quality shots. Dietrich has made a lot of easy saves, whereas Elliott has faced some tougher shots.
Now, what about Dallas? You're a goalie, former goalie for John Hopkins, an All-American. Explain what he is doing tonight, because he has had some tough saves.
Well, I think it's been a question of inches. 3 of those goals deflect off his shoulder, his face mask, and in this game especially, you get 60 shots on you. Occasionally, you're going to give up a goal like that. Unfortunately for him, it's been in the final game. He's had a great season, and for him, this might be his poorest game of the year.
Well, Rochester's going to come back too in the second half. I can guarantee you that. It was a close one last time these two teams met. Lee Belsma will have more for you coming up in our halftime show with stats and stuff live from Phil.
State Spectrum 8-4. The upstart Rochester Nighthawks, an expansion team, threatening to win the World Championship against the defending champs. This is a Bud Light halftime report, and I'll tell you what, the crowd here is a little bit stunned. Hi everybody, I'm Lee Belsmo. The numbers show you that these teams are playing at a very even pace, but I think the difference is that the team from Rochester is putting more of their shots on goal. Philadelphia hustling very well. Look at Philadelphia leading in loose balls 42-31, but shots on goal. For all those loose balls, Rochester leads, although small, they still lead with shots on goal, and Dietrich has been huge. 18 saves for him, 15 for Philadelphia and Elliott, and how about the 2 that absolutely hit Elliott that went in after they hit his face mask? The shot chart for Rochester shows you that they are scoring a lot in close. 3 right in front of him, 4 goals to his left in the finishing fashion, only 1 from well out front. So they're moving the ball in on top of Elliott. That's what they want to do. Good ball movement, get on top of him. Use back doors. This is for the Wings. You see also that the Wings are moving the ball in close to get their goals. No shots from the outside, no goals. That is pretty good offense as well. So both teams moving it well. A 4-goal deficit, not a place that Philadelphia likes to be in. But as Quint and Christie said, they were here last year. They came in the second half down by 3, and they ended up winning by a lot. We'll be back in just a moment with the second half of our action from the championship game. Today's Mill World Championship is brought to you by the Philadelphia Airport Hilton, the official home of a mill in Philadelphia. By another expansion team. They start on the power play. If they get possession, they'll be on the power play regardless. Brian Lemon in the box for another 1 minute and 42 seconds. But Rochester does a good job of getting possession, so they'll kill at least 30 seconds of that. Last time they played, Dewey Jacobs scored when they were a man short. You've got to watch. He's got the ball right now. You've got to watch that you don't relax too much trying to get the ball back when you have the man advantage. Pete Park comes in, takes a shot, puts it right into the stomach of Elliott. Power play now. Danielson gives it off to Gary Gate, and now they'll reload that power play. This is actually the first power play for Philadelphia in this game. Marechek takes the shot, and Dietrich didn't even know. The hidden ball trick. The hidden ball trick. But he couldn't find rope. Dietrich wasn't even looking, and it hit him. Unbelievable. And that one hits the gondola. Over here. On the dot. 53 seconds left. That was unbelievable. Gary Gate and Marechek work the hidden ball trick. Look at Dietrich. He's looking to his left, and he gets nailed by the shot. Meanwhile, Seneca finds rope. inside, gets open inside of Thorpe, and just slam dunks on probably a still stunned Dietrich. Second goal of the game for Paul Denikin, and the story there is his stick. He changed sticks after the first game. Teams all even now. He had a pretty bad offensive year. Philadelphia now back to the 3-8-5. But then Paul Denikin today went back to his old stick, and he's got 2 goals. Very confident. Elliott looking more and more relaxed. Philadelphia into the power play. Aaron just rockets that one off the pipe. Good defense by Philadelphia on Jake. Here come Bates and company. Bates to Finneran. He's a great feeder. Watch him. You don't know where the ball's going. He's looking all over the field. The best feeder on the Philadelphia team. Astrid shoots off. Nathan follow-up shot. No knee. And put it home. Here comes Rochester. Quick got Denikin, the offensive powerhouse. Wait a minute. Paul Gates all alone. Fast break. If he gets it, 10 minutes. Paul Gates looks a little bit tired. Paul gives the ball back to Philly. Paul Gates looks tired. Look, he can't get the stick. And after the shot, he looks a little fatigued. Finally gets it and hurries the shot. Trailing player wasn't that close. He had time to fake out Elliott. There were no fakes involved. He just sent it toward Rope and didn't find it. 3-goal lead for the Nighthawks. Here comes Philadelphia. We talked about their fitness being key. They will run at you at the same level for 60 minutes. Martin to Flynn. Wheels for the righty. Can't beat Dietrich. Dietrich. No goal. No goal. That one comes off. Man was in the crease. A 3-goal lead for the Nighthawks with 11:39 left in the third. Chester leads 8-5. They've got the 3-goal lead. This one rolls behind Dietrich. The follow-up inside by O'Grady. He was in the crease. That's why that goal doesn't count. It's still a 3-goal lead, but Philadelphia is really fired up. They come at you hard. They missed the first quarter advantage like they normally get when they came out with a cannon shot here in the third. Stuart Jacobs, haven't heard much from him lately. Inside, can't get it on the give and go. Tried to find Mearns, but Elliott's there. Jacobs has been a little bit off all game long. They haven't been able to get to him cleanly. He hasn't been able to get to other people cleanly. Maricek hit from behind by Burnham. He'll get 2 minutes in the box. Okay, it's 5. Here's 2 minutes. 5-4. The Nighthawks threatening to take themselves. Going to kill. Burnham can't believe it. Philadelphia 0 for 1 attempt in the power play. Rochester 1 for 1. Right here, fellas. Gotta go. So the Nighthawks, with penalties, are really hurting themselves, obviously. Philadelphia up top. Gary Gay looking for Ray. And this baby's all over. Gate really positioned that shot beautifully. Second goal at 8. Gary Gate. Philadelphia 3 unanswered goals. It's a 2-goal game, 8-6. Maricek against Burnham. Burnham is now out of the box. Gary Gate going against Reggie Thorpe. What a matchup this is. All-American from Syracuse against All-American from Syracuse. Now he's doubled with Burnham. Burnham can't stay with him. Dietrich makes the save. Bad Fast break, if Paul can get it. Paul Diggs looking for it. Cannot get it. Gate has been not on top of his game as far as shooting and finishing. His last two chances not handling cleanly. Still caught Gary Roach. Impossible to stop. Hat trick for Gary Gate. And he has scored the last two. 4 unanswered goals for Philly. Watch out. Spinner in. Can't find the mark. Got back down to 10. Miller, shot clock 5. Check from Jimmy Sudan. Ball down. Here's how the Gates are playing today. Each with 3 goals, 2 assists for Paul, 1 for Gary. These players have played identically the last 3 games coming into this game. They were within 1 point of each other. Lions can't pick it up. Pete Park trying to be a factor. Park working down low. Rex Lyons trying to finish. Can't do it. Pete Smith, the Philadelphia bench, is getting a little intense. Hold on, Q. Hold on. We got a fast break. Spinner into the backside. No! Straight goals for Philadelphia. McAvoy again. Watch him look to Finneran. He'll fake the Finneran and just pull it straight down. They've scored 5 straight, 4 straight in the second half. They are now tied. It's anybody's game in Philadelphia. Hey, but it's hard to get on the guy, all right? Off the guy. Hey, here's the fucking ball. Everybody just fucking take it down. One foot. One, red on the door. One, red on the door. Come on, let's go. Well, this is that explosion that they didn't get in the first quarter, and Gary Gate leads the charge. Quick. Gary, 4 goals right here in the third quarter. What went on at halftime? This place is going crazy.
Well, we just know that we're not playing well. We got to pick it up. We're going to win this game. We got to do something about it. We have to play hard and make a difference.
Phillies come out with their second win, Leaf.
They look a lot like we expected them to look in the first quarter, Quinn, and that's where they come out just running and gunning and almost blinding you with offense. That's what they've done here. Of course, Rochester's helped them out with 2 power plays. Back corner, Brady can't finish on Dietrich. The shots are getting easier for Philadelphia as they continue to get ground balls. Nauskin, Volker. It's the defensive line pretty much for Philadelphia. Hollenbeck picks it up, looks for the leading player, can't find him. Flynn runs up down. Trailing players Pete Park. If you're a Rochester fan, you need to break the momentum real soon. 7.5 left. Dewey Jacobs can't get the center. Flips it back, but Park already left the spot. Shot clock down to 6. Burnham better take one from there. Just opens it up and takes it from way out front. Good shot by Burnham because the shot clock goes down to 1. Philadelphia has just been like a cannon shot. 8 shots, 4 goals. Now don't forget, they've had about 4 minutes of penalty time where they had 5 players to 4 for the other team. Gate takes a shot, but Dietrich gobbles it up. Rochester has not scored in 10.5 minutes. Govett and Thorpe go to the box.
14! 44! Right! Right! Back! 24 and 11! 44! 11!
That's Govett.
2 minutes!
Thorpe. They're both going to the box for 2 minutes. They'll play 4-on-4.
Penalty number 11, Reggie Thorpe, with penalty number 44.
They started right there, and they just continue it a little bit too much. Referee's controlling the game by throwing him in the old box. Gully can't believe it.
2 minutes.
4-on-4. Rex Lyons can't get it past Elliott. Lemon. Paul Gate now. Tough to cover. Martin's looking for help. It's Gate on Martin. They'll use the power. He gets doubled inside. What's going on? Tough call. Lyons set the illegal pick, and it goes the other way. Gary Gate can't beat Dietrich. Big shoulder save. Sudan. The pressure for Philadelphia is intense. Gary Gate running him down. Gate, the MVP. Paul Gate can't pick him up, and now Flynn does. They're trying to get Paul Gate, for Rochester on the fast break. Now he uses his position against Chris Flynn. Flynn can't stop him. Now, no one person can. Phil need help. Paul Gate double teamed, and the ball loose. No call. Martin. And to Gary Gate, this is trouble. Sudan's in front. Gary Gate gets it knocked down. Good play by Sudan. So Paul Gate gets knocked down, no call made. Gary Gate gets knocked down. Oh, from the back. That's the call. Emick, little leapfrog action, pulls Gary down. The ball stays here. 4-on-4. Not a room for the Gate brothers. Up top, watch Marichek. Can't find the target. You notice the pace here for Philadelphia, much more to their liking. A lot more transition. Stuck you into it. Interference. Going that way. Come on. See some of the pressure on Gary Martin on the bench of Philadelphia. Ball knocked out of the stick again by Burnham. Great check. Sudan and Burnham doing a good job of working on Gary Gate. Now finally, Rochester with the ball. Still tie score at 8. Philadelphia has not led yet in this game. It's like an illegal procedure. Too many men. They got 5 guys on the field. That'll cost them a 2-minute penalty. Palace doesn't like it. The game's slipping out of his hands. It should have been 4-on-4. Bad bench management will send another guy to the box. When we come back, it'll be a power play for Philadelphia and their first lead in the balance. Philadelphia with another chance to take the lead. Look at the Philadelphia Spectrum, the Core State Spectrum's crowd. Quiet in anticipation. Tie game. Philadelphia has not led yet. They might on this power play. It's 5-on-4. Gary Gate up top. Nallstrom in that shooter's left-handed position. Finner up top to Gary. Knocked down. Dewey Jacobs gets the ball loose. Tries to get. Oh, he's going to be pulled down. So Jacobs called before pulling down Gary Gate. He almost had a fast break. They're trying to work it, obviously, back to Gate up top. They'll get the ball down low, keep him high. Inside, Dunnigan can't beat Sugar. Dewey Jacobs, he's got Sudan behind him. And he's run down Mike Dunnigan. Great job. Henry, all by himself. Now looks for a trailing player. Cork just nails it, but he can't get the ball. Old ball. 4 minutes left. Game tied at 8. Third quarter. Lee Belsmo, Christy Lee, and Quint Kesnick. We're live. ESPN2 special coverage here on ESPN. Gary Gate out top, down low. The play. Gate. Post. You see the defense collapse on Gary, but it's not in time. 3 guys have come on him. He gets inside the first man. 3 people collapse, but not fast enough. 1 player can't cover Gary Gait. 4th goal today. 6 unanswered goals. 3 of them by Gary Gait. He's had a big night. He's had actually 3 of the last 4. So it's Gary Gait stepping up. Go to halftime speeches. Gary told Quint was, let's step up and do it a little more. Gary Gait following through those instructions. Paul Gait's got to step up for Nighthawks. Then he should get for Rochester. It's Gait to Gait. And they are taking over for their teams. Paul Gait ties it at 9 after Gary got Philadelphia the first lead. That's the first goal in 15 and a half minutes. Paul just powers in on Miller, turns and fires to the far side. First goal in over 15 minutes for Rochester. Paul Gait had a huge first half, this quarter rather, didn't score at all in the second. And now he's got 4 goals. So I think Rochester knows that it's going to be Paul Gait that'll lead them to victory if in fact they can do it. Driscoll inside to Lemon. Volker, defensive specialist, gives off to Bates as the new line comes on. Miller, Bates, Dennington, Finneran, and Jimmy Rogers. Teams even strength, 5-on-5. 2 minutes left in the third. Watch out for Finneran. Game in Buffalo. He's really stepped up his game, and the All-American from Ohio Wesleyan gets the lead for Philadelphia again. 10-9, they lead with 1:30 left. Third quarter. Here they go, back to Covett. Thorpe. Big check by Thorpe as he trailed the offensive player. Finneran's had a big day. Quint Keswick has him on the sideline.
Kevin, big games here in the third quarter. The power play really clicking for you guys. Yeah, that's been our bread and butter all year. And we're just playing wings across now, Quint. And that's going to hopefully get us through. You know, we got to dig. Nothing's done yet. Bunch of grinders down here on the Philadelphia bench.
And Quint, as we know, that's the success of that team. Hart! He's got room! Pete Park has really stepped up his game, as has Kevin Finneran. They match goals, and now we're back to a tie game at 10. Watch Park. He's got huge size, 6'5", 250. He's right now inside and hammers it home to the right of Elliott. But the big problem was getting him open. On the reverse angle, he's way inside. His feet are in plenty good shape, and he just gets Elliott set before he finds the hole. Gate! Explodes off the bench. Burnham can't catch him, and that's an easy slam dunk for the guy with this kind of skill. 5 goals today for Gary Gait, and Dietrich couldn't believe it. The Nighthawks got caught in transition, and you'll notice that the transition game is starting to step up. Rogers. Gets the rebound off Dietrich and just sends it home. Great play. Philadelphia has been getting those second shots all night long, and Dietrich for making the first save, but more often than not, Philadelphia gets the follow-up. Now lead 12-10. 8 goals this quarter for Philly, and it's their first 2-goal lead of the game. Hart wants to be an impact player. Takes the shot, doesn't beat Elliott. Philadelphia owned it. Philadelphia takes a 2-goal lead into the fourth for the world champ.
Well, the Spectrum here in Philly, we're live on ESPN with the World Championship game. And the Philadelphia Wings lead 12-10. Tom Emick, the third quarter was disastrous for your team on defense. That power play situation really hurt you. How are you going to stay out of the penalty box?
Just got to control our emotions, stay out of the penalty box. They have too strong of a power play to for us to take stupid penalties.
In this kind of a game, honestly, how hard is it to do that?
Sometimes in certain situations it can be tough, but you just got to use your head up there and try to control it.
Outscored 8-2 in the third quarter. The Rochester Nighthawks, they are going to be a tough defense. You heard Barry Paulus say.
They need the offense too. Watch out, fast break by Nostra. If he gets it, he'll be in trouble. And beat Dietrich. They're looking to get the fast breaks going. I talked about the conditioning, and that is when we knew it was going to play. Right here in the fourth quarter. They know they've got to use the ball game. He gets a little bit tired. They set up the double. He's too tired to take on one player. Rolls inside. Flynn hustles him. Gary tries to give it off to Ryder. During the break, we heard a very unusual tactic in the fact that Barry Paulus has changed his offense and defensive scheme. The Nighthawks are now going to a one defensive unit, two offensive unit schemes. They're not balancing lines. He's changed some people around to get a defensive line on the defensive end of the field. They're out there right now. Gordon, Silcock, Emick, and Thorpe. There's the defensive specialist, and they'll be on that defensive end of the field as many times as Paulus can get in there. Gabrielson takes a shot. Fresh shot clock. Garrick Gate has the ball. He's been Mr. Everything this year. Air check. Beautiful feed to Govett. Philadelphia scored 3 goals in a minute and a half in the third quarter. To try to keep it going right here. Dietrich opens it up. Giving it to the wingman. Dietrich says, take the outside shots, keep them out of my face. And the stats summary for third quarter. Loose balls dead even, but look at the shots. Philadelphia twice as many. And face-offs a small lead, but they're really killing everybody by getting the offense in transition, getting off the shots. Hold call against Gary Gate. Against Murns, rather, who was playing against Gary Gate. And possession Philly. Great screen by Jacobs, who didn't mean to do it, but he screened his goalie, Dietrich. Randy Murns, Louis Jacobs. Paul Gate. Can't get the shot. Paul Gate looks a little tired. Gary Gate, great shape, but Paul's had some back problems this year. Shoot it! This was huge. Sudan was in a great spot. He'll go all the way across and then go backside, and Alex somehow gets a piece of it. He has been a big part of the success. First team All-Pro. A 2-goal lead for Philadelphia as they owned the third quarter. They want to retain the championship. 2-goal lead for Philadelphia. 12 minutes left in the game. The World Championship, a special ESPN2 presentation of Major Indoor Lacrosse. Rochester expansion team trying to beat the defending world champs. Gabrielson. Keith Park gets a loose ball. He's got Driscoll to his left. Park will take it. Oh, it gives it to Driscoll. No shot. Critical mistake. And you can tell that Rochester looks leg weary. And you heard Tony Resch talking about his team wearing him out. Tony Resch wants Philadelphia is wide open on the far side, right there. Finally, they get the ball. The man's covering him. Jacobs. Go! Long time coming for Dewey Jacobs. He's had trouble handling the ball tonight. They've had trouble getting him the ball. But finally, Driscoll sees him on a cut. He'll come right across into the cylinder, makes one fake to set Dallas to his left, and then beats him on the near side. One goal game, 12-11. The defending champion, Philadelphia Wings with the lead. Lee Fells going on with Christy Lee. Live presentation, ESPN 2 presentation of Major Indoor Lacrosse League action. This is the World Championship. Philadelphia defends in the silver and black, the teal and white. The Rochester Nighthawks expansion team. Randy Mearns inside. Dewey Jacobs couldn't pick it up again. Notice again, he's having trouble with his stick work. He's just not real quick and clean tonight. Maricek. Nostra likes the outside shot. Maricek can do it all. Rogers says, cut inside, let me clear out. Rogers looking far side for Nostra, can't get over, shot clock down to 6. Ball checked out, they'll lose possession on the shot clock. Sedan goes down to try to get the ball. On the drive, let's go! Way to go, dude. Get it back, get it back. Alice likes the latest push by Dewey Jacobs. It's a 1-goal lead for Philadelphia, but Rochester's got possession. Ball Gates. Big Pete Park. And a huge save for Dallas Elliott. Once Park went to the pipe, he had little to shoot at. Look at the first half, 8-4 by Rochester. And then in the third quarter, it was an 8-2 quarter in favor of Philly. That's where they got the 2-goal lead. Rochester scores 1 goal. It's a fourth, and that's where we are. Oh, great shot by Driscoll. Wrapped up by Lemon. Lemon finally gets the ball back to Dietrich. Here's the defense right the other way. Go up if he can. Park looks to the gate. Can't find anybody and gives it to Lemon. This is definitely Philadelphia's pace. They love to run. They want to wear out the Nighthawks. They feel they're in better condition. I don't think anybody would argue with that. Next Lions. Play for the Iroquois national team in the World Championships. Lions takes the shot. Elliott makes the save. Philadelphia gets the ball on an illegal touch. 8 minutes left in this World Championship. From the four-state spectrum, Philadelphia defending the World Championship against the upstart expansion team from Rochester. Finners had a great game, a great postseason. And top. Bates. Shot clock down to 2. Down to 1. Shot clock violation, and quit Scott Gabrielson, the team captain on the sideline for Philadelphia.
Scott, fatigue has got to be the biggest factor here in the late stages. Right now, I mean, it is fourth quarter. This is what we call crunch time, and we've been working for 6 months for this. I think we got to keep pushing, keep running, and this is where the best team will win right now. The tempo's definitely picked up down here, Leaf.
And Quinn, I think you'll agree that it's in Philadelphia's favor to run like this. They are in great condition, but anything can happen.
I got it!
Hold call against Rochester. Rochester holding a little bit more than Philly, who wants to run. 1-goal lead, 7:10 left in the game. Last time these two teams faced here, this year in the regular season, it was 18-17. Another racehorse game. A lot of that shot for where he wants it, way out front. Gets his first goal of the game, a 2-goal lead for Philadelphia with 6:40 left in the game. Right now, it's the Philadelphia team with a 2-goal lead, 6:40 left. Possession's critical. Philadelphia owns this one. 2-goal lead, and they've got a great conditioned team. Lynn, Deidre. Save. Unbelievable offensive push in the second half. 2 goals in 39 seconds. Philadelphia continues to just push the in-your-face offense against the defense of the Nighthawks. 14-11, they lead by 3. This is their second goal of the night. McAvoy. Now this is Eric Check. He's got a great mind of that feed. Very good loads up top against Reggie Thorpe. The pick for him works. Now Dovett's open because of the pick. Down low. And Rogers can't finish, but they get a fresh 30. Nighthawks need the ball back. 3-goal lead now looks pretty imposing. Double team by Sudan and Thorpe. Sudan better find somebody. Somebody should be open. Sudan not covering anybody. Sudan now fires up. Fast break. Sudan against Rogers. He's got Park behind him. Sudan's got Park. If he finds Gate can't get it. Park can't get it. Elliott does. Three-goal lead for Philly as they look to ice it with one more. Rochester needs to stretch the field. Sudan tried to take off on a fast break. They really need to. Hit ball trick. Nobody. McAvoy back now to Finnery. Nighthawks need to get some fast break opportunities. They don't look like they have the conditioning to get there. Burnham looks ahead, doesn't find anybody except Philadelphia Wings. Dragged by Billy Miller. Finally down to Dewey Jacobs with 4:20 left. 3 goals down. They need one. Paul Gate just trotting along. He's had that back problem. He hasn't had a chance to get in great condition because of a back problem that kept him out of a couple games. Or limited him in about 3 or 4 games. Jacobs! Another 30-second possession for Philly. Oh, they lose that ball if Driscoll can pick it up. Nighthawks really got to finish one of these to have a chance. They're down to about 3:50 in the game, and they need 3 goals. Philadelphia scored 3 goals in 1:30 in this game, so it can be done. Lions go to finish. Can't beat Elliott. Barron went out of the crease. Re-entry. You can't leave the crease with the possession and go back into the crease. That's what Finneran did. Great hustle. Too much coaching. Throws for Paul Gate. Paul Gate working one-on-one with Volker shows that nobody can cover either Gate brother by themselves. Elliott gets beaten, and Paul Gate scores again. Watch how he works one-on-one with Brian Volker. Wheels inside, goes to his right hand, which he normally doesn't do. Paul Gate gets 5 goals in the night. They're back to it in 2 with 3:20 left in the game. Dropping it right in the last 3 minutes, 20 seconds of the game. We're live on ESPN with our exclusive ESPN2 coverage of major indoor lacrosse. This is the championship game. Lee Belsmo, Quinn Peasant, and Christy Lee bringing the action. As the Rochester Nighthawks in white expansion team with this man, Paul Gate, number 19. Dewey Jacobs sets a pick. Paul Gate a little bit tired, comes up front. Can't beat Elliott. Follow up, Roach. Follow-up shot. by Matt Ryder. And Matt Ryder brings it back to within one, 14-13. Philadelphia has had several follow-up shots work. Paul Gates shoots first. The ball bounces out to Ryder. Ryder comes into the cylinder, and he just finds the corner beautifully. Third goal this season, a huge goal tonight. Illegal procedure gives the ball back to Philadelphia. Paul Gates is playing offense. It's that series of defensive specialists that Rochester is using right now. But 2 straight goals for the Nighthawks makes it a 1-goal game with 2 minutes left. Dennigan looking for the winner, and he can't find it. Fresh shot clock. Inside, trying to get it to go ahead shot. They can't do it. Shot clock down to 18-17. McAvoy all the way out to Miller. Shot clock at 14. Miller against Reggie Thornton. Reggie Thornton with a great check. Ball's loose, ball down. Shot clock at 6. In front, McAvoy can't beat Dietrich. He gets possession in the crease. Now it's crunch time for the Nighthawks. 1:30 left in the game. Chris Flynn is guarding Paul Gates. Chris Flynn is trying to shut Paul Gates off the ball. They don't want him to touch it. Timmy Sedan has it. They need one to tie. Pete Park can't beat Elliott.
He's in the crease.
Rochester. Pete Park could have been held, but in the crease was called, and they lose possession. 1:12 left. Clock management for Philly is excellent because they are using as much time as possible. A 1-goal lead. 1 minute left and the ball.
Last minute to play, and the fourth and final quarter on the beat.
Nostrand. Gary Gate wants to end it with one more goal. Gary Gate tries for a right-handed shot. Back to Nostrand. Shot clock down to 2. They used every second of the 30 seconds. Beautiful job. Rochester pays the goal. Dietrich is coming off. They're cutting off Paul Gates. Bolger is cutting off Paul Gates. The timeout will be called by Rochester. Here we go, boys. Down to the last 30. All right, Rochester's last timeout. 32 seconds left. This play has to tie it to get them in overtime. Just keep it. Yep. No, don't go for it. Because we have one, right? We have one. One more time on the clock. Gonna call a goal. Right, what? Okay, we got 25. Okay, we have 25 on the clock. We're gonna pull a goal. It's a 6-on-5 right now. 6-on-5. Okay? Peter, we want you right in the middle. Peter, in the middle. It's a 5-on-4. Keep in the middle. Okay? We want you in the crease. All right? We want 2 crease. We want Matty up top. Okay? Wait for the guy to cut in the middle. You just go and meet the ball. Right? You just go like a center. Right? And then come through it. Goalie's already been pulled. Paul Gate, number 19, the most valuable player in last year's championship game. But for Philly, went to the expansion team, Nighthawks. He'll get the ball. The goalie is pulled. You heard him talk about putting Pete Park in the middle. Pete Park will be in the middle. Philly will zone it up. They're going to crowd the middle and make the shot come from high. Billy Miller will go out and meet Paul Gate. Paul Gate brings it in to Jaggers, back to Paul Gate. Far side, Sedan. Can't beat Elliott. Ball loose. Ties it up. Unbelievable. Elliott made the save. Matt Ryder gets the loose ball. Elliott can't believe it. The game was over. They had possession, but Matt Ryder got the ball back. Great defense. Gets it out front for the finisher, the experienced Rex Lyons. Watch. Ryder. Ryder comes out and gets it out to Lyons. He's a great finisher, and he hammers it home to tie it 14-all. This is for the championship. All they had to do was kill the clock. Lyons, though, sends this one past Elliott to tie it. And the bench can't believe it. They love it. It's tied at 14 with 23 seconds left. It'll be Flynn for Philly against Silcott, number 4, in the faceoff.
We're getting it, Doc. Oh, they got something right behind the bench, first row. EMTs are in. They got it.
Rex Lyons, the big goal there. He's had a sensational post game, and Christie's got him right now.
Rex Lyons joining me right now. A huge goal, Rex. It puts you right back in this game with just 23 seconds left.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. We got 23 seconds left, but we can just hold the ball and get into overtime. We'll be happy with that.
What about the fatigue, though, in this point in the game when you go into overtime?
Well, I think everybody wants it pretty badly, and I just think it's a matter of who wants it more.
And adrenaline just takes over?
That's right.
Rex Lyons with a huge goal to tie things up here in the World Championship game with 14 up the sleeve.
Rex Lyons had 3 goals and 1 assist last week in the playoff game. Look at this one. Great finisher, Rex Lyons. And he puts that one over the shoulder. The biggest goal of his indoor career, tying in 14. Referees have been working on the bench area behind the Nighthawks as we look at Dallas Elliott. The crowd trying to get a little bit more involved. Lyons' second goal tonight. Look at Dietrich, fatigued, on his knees, resting. It'll be Brian Silcott, number 4, against Flynn, number 9, for a possession that could win the championship. Ball loose, Sudan. McAvoy gets it for Philly. And a timeout called. They'll have a shot to win it all. You saw one gate try it for the Nighthawks. Now let's see what Tony Rush sets up for the other gate offense. Gary Gate and company from Philly.
Good spot play there. Good ground ball, Matt. Good ground ball. Lay it up over there. Gotta make them earn it. You want this? What happened now? Did we just lose it behind the cage? We got to call a timeout there. Hutch is going to win it. Here we go, Brock. Let's go.
Tony Rush talking defense, defense, defense. Gary Gate out against Timmy Sudan. It's Nostrum that brings it down, gets it in the corner to finish. 7 seconds, Gary Gate's got the ball. It'll be one more shot to try to win it all. Can't find it. Overtime. Game ends at a 14-14 tie. 2 years ago in '92, Buffalo beat Philadelphia in overtime, and they won 11-10 to crush the hopes of Philly. This time, Philly hopes to win it all in a sudden death overtime. We'll be back with the first 5 minutes sudden death in just a moment. Ryder gets it out front. Rex Lyons finishes it off. Elliott had just made a sensational save that should have won it, but Rex Lyons scores goal number 14, and now we're going into sudden death overtime. This is for the World Championship. Any shot will win it. Both gates have 5 goals each. Rochester now looking for the winning goal in their storybook season. Shot clock down to 6. They better hurry up. They're not going to get it off. In front, trying to get Paul Gate. Couldn't do it. They lose possession unbelievably. Now here comes Philly. Number 1 offense in there. Gary Gate looking for it. Gary Gate to win. second shot wins it all in sudden death overtime. Christie's got this game's MVP right now.
Oh boy, what a way to win a championship here in Philadelphia. Gary Gate, you are our MVP. Jack Madonna from the Anheuser-Busch Company, Bud Light would like to present you with this trophy.
Well, thanks very much. It was just a great team effort. We came back and we did what we had to do. It was a great win.
What about this Rochester club? Did you expect this out of them?
Yes, I did. They're a great team. They got my brother Paul put on a heck of a performance. It's outstanding. The whole team played well. It was just a great game.
You and Paul were almost identical. It was a great game for both of you. Almost identical goals.
Well, we try and step up for our teams, and it makes for a great game.
And now you get the wonderful Bud Light Most Valuable Player Trophy. Congratulations, Gary. Leave its pandemonium here in Philadelphia with the World Championship wings for the second time in a row.
Gary Gate got the ball up front. This is the replay of the winning shot for the World Championship. A rifle shot beating Dietrich from out front. What a huge game for Gary Gate and the Philadelphia Wings. They regained the World Championship in the city of Philadelphia that has come to love Major Indoor Lacrosse. He is the MVP of the league this year. He is the MVP of this team. He has led his team in scoring 9 out of the 10 games this season. Gary Gate had the most sensational season of his life. Hope you enjoy our ESPN2 production of Championship Major Indoor Lacrosse right here on ESPN. Coming up next, the Bauchelon Championships from Amelia Island Plantation. For Quick President and Christy Lee, I'm Lee Felsen.